Hello, welcome in my presentation. Since it's the last slot of the day, it's going to be a presentation that's very light. It has no code, it's only me telling how we do Android projects, in the hope that you might find some insight or some tool or something we do interesting and something that you could use for your projects, maybe. Now, why am I doing this talk? Well, basically, we came to think that this is a talk or a topic that we do quite often. And the reason is, I work for a company, consultancy company in Belgium. And what we do is basically two big groups. Some of us do typical consultancy work, so we hop from client to client. We do project a few months here, a few months there. So it's really like starting up a new Android branch at a client, or they need a specific topic of expertise like security or whatever. And then another part of us is really taking on projects. We do them in-house, and then we deliver an app. And when we do that, we quite often think about how to do this in an effective and an efficient way. First of all, when you take on projects, you do them for a client. One of the things we want to do is we want to make good apps. Quality is quite important for us. At the same time, if you want to be on time, on budget, you want to have everything working well, we're still a company, we want to make a little bit of money too, so we quite often think about how can we work here in an effective way. And at the same time, the rest of us that are working at clients are quite often the ones like starting up an Android project, or we get asked, how should we do it? Do you have an insight how we can make this better or not? So this is really the topic about working in an effective way is something that comes up quite a lot for us, so why not make it a talk? Now, the only problem we have at our company is that quite often the projects we do come with a non-disclosure agreement, and that's not so very handy if you do a presentation and you want to do some examples. But luckily, one of the clients I'm currently working at is called VRT. It stands for Flemish Television and Radio. It's basically it's a public broadcaster. Now, in Belgium, it's already a small company. I mean, the total population of Belgium is already a lot smaller than what you have here in Istanbul. And then the country isn't small enough already. We also have a couple of official languages. We have this separation between a Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, a French-speaking part. So in the end, this is a company, a public broadcaster. It has to fill 2 television channels, 5 radio channels. We do apps, we do sports reporting, news, stuff for kids, stuff for youngsters, and so on. And still the target market is mainly the 6 million Dutch-speaking people in Belgium. So we have to do basically as much programs, apps, and so on as all the big broadcasting companies, but for a very small target audience. So also for this client, working in an efficient way and in an effective way is quite important. Now, if you would look at Europe, at all the public broadcasters, the VRT is, according to several sets of numbers, the cheapest run public broadcaster, and still we want to do well. So that's why I can use this client as an example for how we can do an effective way of developing Android applications. Now, for starters, I'm firmly convinced that this is not only a technology question. I mean, if you ask me, it's as much a people or a social problem instead of only related to technologies, tools, libraries, and so on. And I think if you want to deliver a project on time, on budget, with good quality, I think it's just as important to think about who is working for you, what is your culture, and so on. And that's quite hard. I mean, I also don't think you can do a talk, do these 12 steps, and you will be an effective team working very well together. I also want to talk mainly about a few tools and the way we set up a project. But I think I really need to start with a few key habits, I would say, of an effective team. And how you get your goals aligned in a whole team, how you get everyone in the team behind the same vision. And I think the first thing we need to acknowledge is that communication is so important. I mean, if you talk with people that are not into software development, quite often they think that we are just bashing a keyboard for 8 hours a day and that's it. But I think everybody that does software development in a professional way knows that communication is also important. You're working with humans in the end, and at least for us, we have lots and lots of interaction in a team. For us, we really don't want to have a lone coder somewhere in the corner. It's very important that we work together as a group. And so we really, really encourage debate. Let's make that specific for Android. Since we quite often start a new project or we start working for new clients, starting a new app is something that regularly happens to us. So we also quite often have the discussions in the team like, what should we do? Is the old way that we are doing Android still the good way? Is there some new tool, new library, new insight that we should start working with? And that's something we really try to encourage. Everybody in our team is really free to express themselves. So if you're just from school, you start in our team, you just have as much possibility to speak up as the senior guys in the team. So we also try to have the more introverted people really speak up. And at the same time, when you encourage debate at the end, we still want to deliver an app. And one good technique, I think, that we picked up when you have these discussions is, let's say you start a new project and you do this whole discussion, should we start using another library or not? A good example, for instance, is databases on Android. I mean, what should you do? Should you do the old SQLite way? Should you put the content provider on top of it or not, or an ORM? Or should we even go to Realm as an alternative database, which is really getting popular nowadays? And a good technique that we use, it's from Matt Rabel, who is quite a well-known speaker in the Java world. Quite often, after these discussions, we still want to make it objective in the end. So while we have everybody suggest whatever they want to suggest, we always try to end with a matrix. So we pick features that are important for the project. Then we will try to give a score, and we will take the 2 top scoring libraries, for instance, and make a quick POC from them. So in the end, although you encourage debate, although we always try to be on top of things, of the new tools and insights that we see in Android, we always try to make it a little bit more objective. And quite often when we start a project, we will do like 1 or 2 days of proof of concepts with the top scoring libraries from our matrix. Another insight from communication, we quite often try to do lots of our communication online. We mainly use Slack, and we do a lot of Hangouts. And one of the advantages we have with that is also that it allows us to have people that work remote or work at home. So we really want to make it possible in the team to, for instance, work a day from home and still really be part of everything that is happening. Another thing that we find quite important is that we give everybody trust. So who here does Android development? It's not a lot, but who of you has like access to put your application in the Play Store? Quite okay. I mean, that's one of the things we also want to do. Like, everybody that is part of our team, we really want to give a lot of trust, and we really want to give, for instance, the possibility to everybody to have access to production code, and so on. Another thing we always try to do is, when you hire people, and especially I'm quite often at the other end of the table, when I look for a new client to consult it, I'm quite often at an interview, and so many times I'm being interviewed by a manager, and I find that so extremely strange. I mean, at our company, when we do hiring, it's really something we do with the team. So all the CVs that are coming in, we let everybody in the team take a look, and we even find quite often that one of our people will already have like a working, or will have had a working relation with somebody, or know somebody from a user group, and so on. And we find it just a much more better way to hire, instead of doing the really typical send in your CV and have a talk with a manager. And then one of the last things I want to say before I get more into like the technical tools that we do. We are quite, we have like an aversion for technical debt. So one of the rules we do is, if you touch a piece of code and you find it's not up to spec, we always require you to clean up that code. So tidy up a bit, write some extra unit tests and so on. And although that may take a little bit more effort, we have always found in the end that it's quite worth the effort. And then in the end, well, again, since we want to have like this common culture, we always also try to encourage our team a little bit. So at my current client, we do a lot of gaming. Team Fortress is an excellent game for that because it's free, it runs on every computer. But also we do things like brown bag lunches, for instance, where we have somebody from the team just give a short presentation about a library or a new technology or something that you have worked on, and you try to explain it for the other people in the team. Now, again, I'm really convinced that selecting the right people and having a good working culture is very important if you want to work in an effective way. But that's not easy. That's also not something that you can readily find in a book how to do it. It's not something that you can go to for a presentation, I think. And the way we did it is we didn't go to a manager and we said, well, this is the way the company should start working from tomorrow on. It's really something I would say that it starts with yourself. You should really try to lead by example. Take baby steps, and I think that in that way you will also be able to get your team really working well together in an effective way. Now, let's go on a little bit more to the examples. How do we do Android? First of all, one thing that we learned over the years is we really prefer to work in a way that we first make like the minimum viable product. There's quite a well-known book, The Lean Startup, which is more about the methodology. But that took us quite a while to get there. That's also why one of the goals, one of the shared goals we have as a team is we want to deliver quality because it enables us to have more like longer relations with our clients. So instead, we are not an agency that picks on project after project after project. We throw an Android app over the wall and we go to the next one. We really like to make quality and hope that in the end we will be asked back by the client for another project or a second phase or whatever. And at that point, it's also a little bit easier to do this talk with your client and saying, well, instead of trying to have all assumptions ready in the beginning, we have really learned that if you start a big project with a lot of initial assumptions, quite often they are based on rather flawed requirements. So we always try to propose and do an iterative approach to app development. And we find that in that way, it's much better to find out what the client really, really wants. And so another good thing about this approach is that you already very early on in the project are able to deliver something to the client and that you can talk about. And we find out that if you do it this way and you iterate all the way until the end, it's a much more productive way of working. Because in the end, building the right thing is always more important than building it right. Now, the way we work, again, I work for several clients. The main thing to take away is I think it's quite useful to work in an agile way. I'm definitely not going to say that Scrum is the way to go. I'm personally much more a fan of the Kanban way of doing things, but I think it's really important to work in an agile way, definitely if you do an iterative approach to app development. This is a Scrum board at the current client, and I think the main takeaway maybe would be that whether you do Scrum, whether you do Kanban, or whatever, we try to go back and forth with the clients quite often. So what is important for us is we try to do demos at least bi-weekly. So every 2 weeks we will have a gathering with the clients. We will demonstrate what we have done. And not only demonstrate what we have done, we also try to excite them a little bit for what is coming. So we find that quite a good way of working. Now, working on an app, from idea to a final working app, how we do that is we always start with prototyping. So quite often the first step is not we don't dive in our editor. We quite often start with a whiteboard. So we ask everybody involved in a project in one big meeting room, and we just sketch out for a few hours on a whiteboard. That's really beneficial for us. It's so quick. And one of the reasons we also did that is because we quite often were having these projects where like project managers and business people were thinking about something and just forgetting about the technical side. And we always try to bring everyone together around the whiteboard. We sketch out the problem and possible solutions, and we definitely always involve somebody technical from the start. And after that, we go to paper prototyping. So again, we don't immediately jump into another set of tools, because paper just works so fast. And for the people that were here for Marie's talk in the afternoon, I can quickly go through this because she sketched a similar approach. Because for us, we really found out after doing it for a while that it's just so fast, we don't lose any of development time. So this is really how we try to set up the first or the initial screens, thinking about it and going back and forth with the clients. And it's only then when we have like an idea of what we want to do that we will move on to like design. So if you were asking me to make an app for the DevFest here in Istanbul, this is my initial proposal for an awesome app. So we make then a design after we already have been going back and forth a little bit with the client. And then the tool we use is InVision. There are several tools in this space. The one we use is just InVision. And the reason is it just works good for us. So you can try it out. And the way it works is very simple. So we make some initial designs. It's very simple. You can just drag and drop all your designs in the InVision tool. It's a web-based tool. And at that point, you can just share a link to the application. You can see it in a browser, but of course, if you visit this link with your phone, it will show up on a phone as the design is intended. And we found out that it is just working very well. So you can share that link with like all the stakeholders in the project. They can open it up on the phone and they immediately have like a feeling for, well, how big are the touchdowns, how good is it working? You can put a little bit of interaction in the screens and so on. So that's the way we work. InVision is quite a nice tool because you can also gather comments from all people involved. So like the two pink bullets are just places where you can put in your comments. And in the end, you have a dashboard where you very nicely will see all the comments for your design. So this is a way that we have already not spent so much time. The design is very rudimentary, but still we were able to go back and forth. We even have it on a phone or on a tablet, whatever the client wants, and we can already start gathering feedback. And it's only when we have passed this stage that we will go further on, when we will start with development, but we feel that at this point we already have quite a good feeling for what the client really wants. And at that point, we fire up the IDEs, and so we think about importing the artwork. What we use then is a tool called Sketch. Sketch is what we mainly use these days instead of Photoshop. And then the real interesting one is Zeppelin. So what you see here is a screenshot of Zeppelin, and this is really your designer handing off design to the developer. So instead of the old days where the designers were like generating assets and sending you like big emails with, whoa, the code for this color is, we nowadays use a tool called Zeppelin. So as a developer, you see everything you need. So whatever you need to implement a design is here. So if you need to know colors, if you need to generate assets, you can just now do it yourself instead of being on the phone with your designer, telling them that one of the assets on the Dropbox shared folder is not working and so on. Or whatever, like on Android, you can choose whatever you need. Do you need 4, 5, or maybe even already 6 densities? As a developer, you can now extract it from the design. And it's just working great for us. So even if you need to know what these sizes are, X, Y, Zeppelin knows about iOS and Android. So for Android projects, you quite nicely see DP values, SB values for text sizes. You have all your fonts, you have all your margins, and so on. And so each time the designer does an update, you can see it appear in the Zeppelin tool. And as a developer, you can quite nicely extract whatever you need. So it's working very well for us. It's also not a very expensive tool. And I think you especially should all check it out because it's being made here in Istanbul. And it's just a great tool, at least for us. So at that point, we are developing and we are releasing or thinking about releasing the first version of an application. But of course, it doesn't end there. We are also quite interested in gathering user feedback. So we do quite a lot of A/B testing. I don't see it done so often already on mobile. I think it's an accepted practice nowadays in websites or in web applications. But it's something you can very well do on mobile too. And there's quite a lot of tools available. You have a quite good A/B testing tool from Amazon and so on. And we use it to develop with a mindset of we want to optimize everything. We also want to iterate as fast as possible because we believe that will make a better application. And so we do A/B testing for quite a lot of things. So let's say we want to find out if a user can find all the features quite easily or if the onboarding flow is working well. So instead of just having like two people deciding how the application should behave, we quite often will make like a few variants on the application and then we will do A/B testing on a set of users. The tool we use is Optimizely, but again, it's just what is working for us. There are quite a lot of tools in this space, but we just find it very convenient. I mean, like another Android example could be nowadays with Android 6, you have the new permissions model. Quite a lot of people are thinking about, well, is the pop-up enough or should we like insert another screen with like more explanation to the user why you are now asking for the permission because the user might be a little bit scared to grant the permission or not. Instead of just thinking that we know what needs to happen, we just test it out with an A/B test. And the way it works is Optimizely is quite an advanced tool because you can not only do things like several versions of a text and see what works best, or several versions of assets. You can also embed several blocks of code, and then on the fly, in the dashboard of Optimizely, you can set up a test and have totally different blocks of code run for different sets of people. And so one of the things we did recently was, we had an application where we thought that the navigation flow wasn't really working that well. So instead of just trying to come up with something ourselves, we thought, that's not really enough. We want to test if the new navigation will be better. So we did set up an A/B test. Some people are still served the old way of navigation. Some people get served the new way of navigation. And then we look into our metrics to see what is working better. Is that one feature that isn't used quite often, will the users now be able to find it better and so on. So A/B testing, it's quite a useful tool for us. Now, another remark, we are quite big on code reviews. So in our company, you can't commit code without having it vetted by your colleagues. And we just find it convenient and very useful because, first of all, it allows the team to know more than one person what is going on, so other people know what you did in the code base. Again, at our company and at my current client, we use the Atlassian suite of tools. It's a great set of tools. It's a paying set of tools. Again, it's working for us, but you can find lots and lots of tools in this space. I mean, if you know GitHub, for instance, you have quite good code review features already built in. So don't focus too much on the tool. But for us, we really found out that it forces us to write readable code. And that's something that we value highly. It's also a very good way to bring your junior developers up to speed. That's also one of the reasons why we do code reviews. So we try to always give constructive feedback, of course, but it's really working out quite well for us. And another practice we do quite a lot at our company is pair programming. So one driver, one navigator. The driver is the one who is writing the code. The navigator is the one who reads and checks and does some sanity testing or helps you think. And we really found out that, especially for like the harder parts, the harder problems in an application, it's really working out very well for us. And again, one of the reasons why we do it is because it's a good way to transfer skills. So if you have like junior people coming into your team, consider doing some pair programming. It's an excellent way to teach people. It's really ad hoc training on the spot. Now, another thing we are quite big on is testing. As said, we want to make apps that are of high quality. So testing is quite important for us. It's not unusual to have thousands of tests in our Android applications. We especially try to test very well things like business logic. UI logic maybe a little bit less, but still, testing is important for us because it really gives us the confidence in our code base. It also makes it possible to do a refactoring. So if we, a few months down the line, need to add a new feature or need to make some changes, it really helps us to give that confidence that the refactor is not going to break something else. It's also quite good if you need to do a code handover. So if we, for instance, are asked to do like the first version of an application in-house at the client, whereafter they will take over, it's really helping. And also, we have so much work to do, I'd really like to fix a bug only once. So for us, it's really helping us to work towards applications of high quality and high stability. On the topic of test-driven development, I think most of you will at least know the concept. You write your failing test first, then you implement the logic, and then you refactor as much as needed. One of my first slides was, I think that you really need to think about how you can set up your team that you can work towards a shared goal. One of the things we have in our company is not everybody is convinced about TDD. So it's not something we do all the time. The important thing for us is just that we are all aligned on the topic of making qualityful applications. So testing is very important for us. We will make sure that almost everything that we deliver is covered by a good suite of tests. It's just not always done in a TDD way. On Android, we find it quite hard to TDD. We mostly use it for like the a typical library kind of project, or like more the businessy kinds of logic that you have in the application, but especially the more you get towards the UI part of the application, it's quite hard. So we only do it from time to time. But normal tests are very important for us. So for our Android project, we have always automatic tests going on. So like the normal unit tests will always be run on every commit. And then UI tests, some of them can take quite a long time, so it's very well possible that we schedule them during the night, for instance. So we use the normal unit testing support that you have nowadays in Android. And for the UI testing, we mainly use Espresso and a little bit of UI Automator. So I would say the typical standards Google-provided libraries and tools. And the way we run them is we run them on a mix of emulators and real devices. This is, this is just a picture I took of a test setup before we moved all the devices into their own dedicated closet. But everybody that has done that, I think a lot of them will tell you that running tests on a big set of physical devices can be quite hard. Quite often, I mean, you even need to think about, is my USB hub working well enough? Once you scale to 10 devices connected, or you will find out that your Android debug bridge will sometimes fail for like, I don't know what reason at all. And so one of the things we started doing is, instead of having all these devices at their own premise, we are nowadays more and more thinking about and using a remote setup. So we hire access to physical devices in the clouds, because we really found out that it's just so much easier to maintain a whole set. So for us, testing on a remote device is something that is really worthwhile. There are quite a lot of players again in this space. You have things like Testroid, you have Amazon's AWS device farm, which we are currently using. But also Google is coming out very soon, I think, with their cloud test lab, because it's already in beta. So, and the way we do it is, like here you see a screenshot of our Jenkins build server. I mean, these are all tests that are running on devices that are hosted by Amazon instead of in our own closet. And we just find out that it's working quite well. Now, when we have this set up, we write quite a lot of tests. We also think about continuous integration, of course, because we just think that it's a very worthwhile practice when you want to ensure quality. So it's really helping us to reduce the risk. I mean, we try to detect a defect as soon as possible, because that also means that we will hopefully fix it as quick as possible. Yes, it has a little bit of overhead, we think, because setting up your CI system will take a little bit of overhead initially, but I really think that along the way, the amount of hours that you save are really worthwhile it. And then of course, yeah, if you think it's important to make quality full applications, it's really a practice that is helping us a lot. Because in the end, I already said so, we want to be known as a company that makes good applications. So that means that we automate everything. I mean, this is even a screenshot. We even automate the lending of devices from our closet. But who here has like a CI system for their Android build? So who has automated builds when you check in code? That's a depressing low number of hands, I would say. But okay, what we do is, so every time code is submitted or committed, our CI system, which in our case I already said is Jenkins, but there are so many possibilities if you do Bamboo or TeamCity or like a hosted solution like Travis. It's all working well. It's about the principle here. We just use Jenkins because we have quite a lot of experience with Jenkins, and we just find out that for our case, a lot of the plugins that you can find for Jenkins are really working well and helpful. And what we did is, well, we built a pipeline, because I think when you go one step further than continuous integration, I think you should start thinking about continuous delivery. And having a build pipeline is really one of those key patterns that you find there, because it really gives you an insight in how the, I would say, the production readiness of your application is. Because you can follow up on every change that is happening in your system. So for Android, that means that we do auto-publishing. So we want to be able not only to automatically build the application, but we want to be able to deploy the application in an automated way. That also means that everybody can do it. So you will not get a call somewhere in the evening saying, you developer are the only one who knows how to do a production deploy. It's all automated at our place. So everybody in the team can do it. And so what we do is our Android APKs, we are able to just deploy them to production. That doesn't mean that we always immediately deploy to everybody. We also extensively use the Google Play Alpha and Beta channels. But here you see, I mean, our Jenkins system is perfectly capable of pushing something to the Play Store. Now, continuous delivery, as I already said, that doesn't mean that every time you commit like 2 words of code, it's going to be automatically published to the store. The concept is that we just want to be able to do that. We want to have a continuous deliverable. So when we want to be able to push something on demand. Now, the way we do it is, for everybody that is using Git, I think this will be like a well-known graphic for the people that have never seen it. This is just a graphic from quite a famous article about how you could structure your Git branches and so on. It's Git flow is nowadays already quite well known, because even tools like SourceTree just have those wizards programmed into the tool. It's just something that is working for us again. But what we have here is, this is a screenshot I took from our Jenkins instance. So you see our build pipeline. I can zoom in a little bit so that you only see like the important parts. So the way we work is, we work on a feature. So it's on its own branch. Only after it's vetted by your colleagues, after a code review, and the automated tests work, At that point, it will be picked up by our system, and it will be selectable as a feature for testers. I mean, this whole setup is the result of lots and lots of plugins and scripting in Jenkins that could really warrant another session. But in the end, this is the wizard that you get. So when you commit a new feature, it's vetted by your colleagues and all the automated tests run, then we still have real testers. They can just select the feature, themselves, and then they can push it through our whole build pipeline. So what you see is we have build steps, we have the instrumentation test. So on Android, the instrumentation testing is the name for the way of testing. And in the end, we can have them distributed to all our test devices. So we use Hockey App. Again, there are several possibilities to use here. You can, for instance, also use Crashlytics and so on. By the way, we do use Crashlytics to gather crash reports from our production applications. But so the tester is able to select the feature, have it built, and distribute it to all the test devices through Hockey App. And at that point, the tester is able to go through everything. And it's only when our testing team has decided that the feature is really done, which quite often doesn't happen from the first time, but at that point, they can approve. So I've also included the approve steps here in the screenshots. So when our QA team is happy, they can just approve the feature, and at that point, it will be uploaded to the Play Store. Now, as I already said, we don't immediately, most of the time, push into production. Like I said, our internal QA team uses Hockey App to distribute all these testing builds to the test devices. And at that point, for instance, if I take the example of VRT, if we would have like one of the sports apps, we will have like a few of the journalists working in the company. They would be our alpha testing team. So they will be on the alpha testing channel in the Play Store. So they will always get those news features pushed to their Android devices. And we also have a beta testing team, so that can be quite simple. We just have a few users that we asked, are you interested in some early access to new versions of the application? And would you be willing to give a little bit of feedback? You can perfectly ask that on a Facebook group or whatever. So what we do is, alpha channel is for our internal users, and beta channel is just for the really motivated users of your application. And it's only when it's passing these two channels that we will really deploy to production. And quite often we even do a staged rollout. So on the Play Store, you can choose to not immediately distribute to everybody, but you can, for instance, say, I'm only going to distribute to 1% of my users, so that if you missed a bug, you will not fail the application for everybody, but only for, hopefully, a very small set of your users. And then in the end, we also use our CI system to gather quite a lot of metrics. Especially important is if you write tests that you know a little bit about the coverage. So this is a little bit a blurred out coverage report for one of the apps I worked on. It's not very visible. Here you would be able to find something like a good 80% of the application is covered by tests. We just find it very useful to have this insight of metrics too. And in the end, we all bring it together in a dashboard. It's a little bit dark, but I think you will be able to get the gist of it. So all the teams at our place get like a television set, and we give them a dashboard because it really gives you insight, or it gives you a visibility in the status of your project. And this is, of course, these are a few builds. The red one is a failing one, and I have, of course, done that on purpose to take a picture. But the tool we use is called dashing. And the good thing about dashing is that you can just make your own dashboard with whatever you want to have on it. So here, for instance, this is for the mobile team. So we have like the status of our builds. Here, very important, we have the status of our environments. So at the bottom you have the test environment, the staging environment, and the production environment. We get all the metrics from our Jenkins CI system, so we get insight into the builds and so on. And we do that for every team, and the tool, again, we use is called Dashing, because it just comes with a great set of pre-made plugins that you can connect with almost everything. If you want to extract information from your Jira, or if you, like in our case, in the evening, you will see your travel times through home, or in the morning, you can see how many of your teammates might be late because there's quite a lot of traffic. It's a great tool. You can find a plugin for almost anything, and if you don't find it, it's very easy to make a plugin yourself. And this is what we use to get insight into the whole environment we run our apps on. Because it's very red, but this is a screenshot or a picture of my spot where I work. And the key is in the top, I have my production probes all going red. So that's really a panic situation. There was quite, at that point, quite important news story going on, and our application wasn't picking it up. So at that point, we were quite fortunate to have like these good tools so that we could extract whatever we want to know about our environment. Now, that's basically it. It's like a very short overview about how we do Android applications. I hope you can take at least a few insights, or maybe a tool that you found interesting, or a way of working, or maybe that you didn't know already, that if you're interested in a good suite of testing, if you want to go towards a continuous delivery way of working, it's very well possible. With that said, if anybody has a question, feel free.
What do you use for code analysis step? What tools?
What we use for analytics?
Code analysis.
Code analytics.
Yeah.
We mainly use Yakoko. It's also the tool that the Android tooling team is working on. So if you do normal unit tests, or if you do instrumentation tests, you already have normally Yakoko in the Android tooling. So that is what we built on. And even if we have multiple modules, we try to gather all the Yakoko tests in one place, and it's working quite well for us. So what you saw is a screenshot of a Yakoko report.
So do you make some static code analysis or something like that?
Sorry?
Static code analysis. Do you do that, or?
Yeah, sure. Do things like check style, PMD, and so on. So like the typical Java tools, we definitely run them on Android too. Oh, by the way, I was allowed to give you a book. I can give you this book. I don't understand the word from it, but I scrolled through it, and it has a picture saying, keep calm and start testing, so I already like the book. Yes? Why TDD is hard? Well, on Android, we find it a little bit hard because the tooling just isn't there. Now, we even try to make it as simple as possible for us. So if you're a little bit into Android, like nowadays, lots of people are talking about like a model view presenter architecture and so on. We also do that because we want to get as much as code as possible into like more normal Java packages instead of having like a very strong connection with Android code, because that is really the problem. It's sometimes quite hard to mock away Android parts in your code base, and sometimes you find it can take like quite a bit of effort, and it's not always quite simple to set up. Like the Android SDK is also riddled with like things like static classes and finals and so on. So it's just more like from how the way the Android SDK is set up way, instead of more the principles of TDD. So we try to extract quite a lot of parts away from typical Android bindings, and that is quite easy to do or to develop in a TDD way. The rest is a little bit harder. And yeah, it's a little bit of trade-off. It's also like the people in our team that like TDD couldn't fully convince everybody yet, I would say. Yes? Whoa, that's quite a broad question. How do you try to improve user experience? Were you here for a session from Marie? I would already say that's like a whole session about that topic. I find it quite a broad question. I don't really immediately know what to say about it. And at the same time, I'm also very much a developer. So I hope I could give you a little bit of way of how we set up the way we do Android in a technical way. I'm not a UX guy. I'm not a UI guy. So I find it difficult to answer your question. But I'll be here around, so if you want to chat a little bit afterwards, feel free. I think my time is up, so as I said, I will be around. So if you want to discuss anything, feel free. Thanks.